Hey everyone, Mr. Voikin here, and today we're going to take a look at some drawing functions, in particular line, circle, and rectangle, and we're going to follow the instructions on the Google Doc that was shared with you. So the first thing it tells you to do is open an AutoCAD.dwt drawing file, and that will be here shortly. Shabam, there it is. And we should save it right away so that the autosave function will kick in. So file, save as, and it tells you to call it drawing functions 1 and your own name, and save that to wherever you're going to save it to. I'll save it to the documents. And that's done. Now remember, whenever we open up a new AutoCAD.dwt drawing template, we need to change the units and set up the limits. Now, if you're using your drawing template that you've created, then that will be done for you, but in this case it's not. So we're going to start off with units, and 1 decimal place is good enough, and millimeters, okay. And the limits, we're going to set up to an A3 paper size with a 0,0 bottom left corner and a 420,297 upper right corner. And to have the grid only showing those limitations, we're going to go down in the status bar to the grid, right click, choose settings, and deselect this one right here that says display grid beyond limits. I like to set my X and Y spacing up to 1 and my grid X and Y spacing to 1 with a major line every 10 units. And now that that's done, I'm just going to double check. Polar tracking is set to 15 and all my object snaps that I want at the beginning to be selected are there, so let's select OK. Now to see my grid, I'm just going to zoom in and pan down until I have my grid space right there showing my limits. Now remember that we are able to draw outside the limits, and I believe in this exercise we actually will be drawing outside of the limits, but don't worry about that. It's just an exercise, again, in learning to set up the units, set up your limits, and the next thing, setting up our layers. So it tells us to create 3 layers. So this is the layer window. Remember not to click on that little X. We use the little docking symbol at the right, which puts it back over to the right. And if I want to open that window again, I go to the top right, find the layers window, and click on the little docking symbol. Again, if it's not there, go up to the top into the menu bar, choose window, and make sure that the layers window is selected. Okay, so I'm going to open that up by clicking on the docking symbol, go down to the bottom left corner and turn on the caps lock. It says the first layer's name is going to be line, and the color is going to be blue, and the default setting for the layer thickness we said to change to 0.035 and have a line type of continuous, which is the only one that's available at this point. Okay, the second layer is going to be circle. Oops. Hit enter, click on the little square beside that. It says to make that red and a line weight of 0.05. And the third layer is rectangle, and it has a line weight of 0.18. And that didn't change. So sometimes you gotta just double check visually to make sure that the changes were made. Okay, and the color of the rectangle is going to be green. Okay, so those 3 layers look good, so I'll click on the docking symbol to put it back. and let's move on to making some lines. So the shortcut for making a line is L. Oops, I got to click in the middle of my screen to bring up my crosshairs and pick box here, the cursor. So L, which is line, and enter. Now remember, we've already set up our preferences, and that's up top here in AutoCAD preferences. In the general tab, we'll just enable the quick secondary click as return. So if I go L enter, I'm in the line command. To exit out of that, I just right click. Okay, and to exit or to go come back in, I just right click again. Okay, so if I make a line, I'm still attached. Right click out, right click in, make a new line, right click out, right click in. So that's basically how you can speed up your drawing by using that right click. So your right hand should always be on your mouse, and your left hand should be on your keyboard if you want to be proficient with your drawing. All right, so the instructions say select the line layer. So I'm going to go over into the properties inspector on the far right side here, and defaulting to layer 0, I'm going to change that to line layer. And it says create a line that is 150 millimeters long and starting at the point 100, 100. So it's giving us a coordinate to start at and making it 100 millimeters long going to the right. Now down in the status bar in the bottom right, I'm just going to go down here where it says show hide line weight, and I'm going to turn that on. It's just going to allow us to see the line a little bit better. So here we go, L enter, specify the first point 100, 100. Hit enter, and it's anchored me down right there. I want to move over to the right hand side and type the length of 150, hit enter, and now I've got this line that is perfectly horizontal and at 150. Now I'm just going to do that again just to show you. See that green line that's right there? That's my snap that's snapping to an angle. And that's this one right down here. It's polar tracking that we set up to 15 degrees. So I want to snap right there where I see that green line, and I'm perfectly at 0 degrees. Okay, so type in 150, hit enter, and we're done. Now it says to move up in a horizontal direction. So again, I get that green line and 150. Then off to the left, green line is right there again, 150. And now there are sort of 3 ways to close this. So one, I can literally type close, hit enter, and that's done. If I hit Command Z, it's going to go back out of here and force me to do it again, which I can do very quickly. Okay. And the other way I can do it is move in this direction. You can see my green line is going down, and I can type 150, and that's going to get me to the bottom. And again, I can right click out of there to exit the command, and I'm just going to delete that line and create a line again from here. And the last way to finish off this symbol would be, instead of typing close or typing in the dimension, I can just come down until it snaps to that end point, gives us that green little marker right there, and it says end point. Click, I'm still attached, right click out, and let's move on to see what it says next. So we're done right there, and it now says draw a line from the midpoint to the midpoint. So a line, which is right here, has an end point and a midpoint and another end point. And then every other point along that line would be, in AutoCAD, is called nearest. But we're told to create a line from midpoint to midpoint going horizontal and one going vertical. And then after that it says go corner to corner. So L enter. Find the midpoint. It should be a triangle. There it is. go across. Now when I get to the other side, it's either going to show up as a triangle showing us it's at midpoint, or it might even give us the symbol saying that we are perpendiculars. So it comes over, and there we go. Actually it's saying midpoint right there. I'm attached, right click out, right click in, find the midpoint, go down to the bottom and find the next midpoint, right click out, right click in, end point to end point, right out, right in, and end point to end point, right out, and we will go check what the next instruction says. All right, well, let's look at the next set of instructions. It says to start from the top right corner, draw a line at 45 degrees, and it should go either to the left or to the right. It says it should go to up and to the right. So L for line, grab that top corner, and notice that when I go straight up, it's at 90 degrees. There's that green snap line. Every 15 degrees, so there's 75, 60, 45, 30, 15, and finally 0. And let's just move it back to 45, which is what it's asking us to do. And I now have a number right there that says 41.4 that is highlighted. That is the length, and it says to make that at 50 and hit enter. I'm still connected. I need to draw a line over here, starting over here, so I'm going to right click out, right click in, and do the same thing, but now off to the left and up. So 50, enter, and it says now to connect those lines like so. And now repeat the process on the bottom, so 45 degrees, type in 50, right out, right in, and 45 degrees, snap to that point, 50, enter, and connect. And finally it says to finish this off by connecting that line and connecting this line right there. Okay, next set of instructions tells us to go to the top of our shape, so I'm just going to pan that down a little bit. And it says to start on the top left corner and draw a line that goes 62 degrees, makes a 62 degree angle, and it goes up and to the right. So I'll go into my line command, which means it needs to go sort of off in that direction right there. Now it says it needs to be 62 degrees. You can see right there I'm at 58, 60, and that is saying I'm at 62 degrees. However, it's not exactly 62, it's just being rounded to 62, so it could be a little bit less or a little bit more. So to ensure that I'm at exactly 62 degrees, you want to press the tab button, which brings that highlight over to the angled sort of section right there, and I'm going to type in 62, and I'll hit tab again, and you can see that locked it in at 62. And it tells me to make this line at a length of 100 and hit enter. Okay, and again, I'm going to right click to go out of there, right click to go back in, and now it says to make a line that goes up but to the left at 62 degrees. Now if we look at that number that's indicating our angle, right now it's saying 119. So basically it started here at 0, and then it went up to 90, and then it keeps increasing here. But I want the angle that's on the inside to be 62 degrees. So I'm just going to subtract from 180. So 180 minus 62 is going to leave us with 118 degrees. So I'm going to type 118, tab to lock that in, and 100 for the length, enter, and complete that shape. And now it says to follow that process on all four sides. So I'm just going to pause the video, get that done, and come back to you, and you can check your drawing compared to what I have done. Okay, so there you have it. All four sides are done following the instructions that are telling us to make an angle of 62 degrees and a length of 100, then connecting those lines. And now finally for the next instruction, it says to make a line basically joining that corner with this corner and that corner down to here, this one to there, sort of forming this octagon shape right here. All right, so that is the end of our line command, or at least the line command for this exercise, and we're going to move into circle. So we're going to come over to the properties inspector, and because we're going to be making circles, we will change to the circle layer. And it says to now make a circle at each of the outside corners with a radius of 25 millimeters. So each one of these corners on the outside of the octagon, so we should have 8 circles with a radius of 25. Now when we type in C, that brings up the circle command, and it's going to ask us to specify or click on our center point of that circle, start to make the circle, and then it's asking us to basically type in a dimension. It doesn't really tell us at this point what we're typing in. So is that the radius or the diameter? Well, it defaults to radius, so that is what we're going to be typing in. So just 25, enter. Again, right click will get you right back into that command, and 25, enter, right click, and just keep cruising along and doing that those same steps over and over again, and you should just get very quick with this as you proceed. And there we go. All right, now that we have those 8 circles on those outside 8 points, we're going to follow the next set of instructions, and it says to create a circle starting with this center point at the middle of this object, and it has a diameter of 75. So be careful that you don't just go C, enter, and start to make a circle and type in 75, because now you just created a circle that has a radius of 75, which is basically double the size that we wanted. So how do I fix this? Well, I can delete it or Command Z and do it again. But any object can be modified using some of the grip points or the property inspector. So if I click on the object, notice that it gives me this grip point, and now if I click on that and drag in, there's a highlighted number which happens to be the radius. And if I type 37.5, which is half of 75, hit enter, and it's going to give us a circle with a radius of 37.5. Now if I look over to the right hand side in the properties inspector, you can see there it is, radius 37.5, diameter 75, and it gives us a bunch of other information as well. There's circumference, where is the X and Y point. So now we're going to essentially change this if we want to by just clicking on it and going 50, or clicking on it and going 75. But we don't want that. We want to click on that and go 37.5. Done. All right, so what does it say to do next? We're now going to create a circle that goes from this, again, midpoint. No, that's not what it says to do. Sorry. It says to create a circle that is tangent to these 2 circles here. So tangent means it's sort of touching the edge here, touching the edge of this circle, and it says it'll have a radius of 90. So that's going to be having a center point somewhere right around there, but that's a lot of math to try and figure that out. And it's probably at a point that has a non-repeating decimal, so it's actually almost, it is 100% impossible to figure out that center point. So luckily, if I go over to the tool set and left click on the circle, it brings up 6 other ways that I can make circle. So I can do center diameter, 2 point, 3 point, tan radius, and tan. We're going to do tan radius. So it says in the instructions, what's the first tangent? Right there. What's the second tangent? Right there. And you can see that the number 75 is in there, indicating the radius, because that is the dimension that we last used. But we want a new radius of 90, so we're just going to type 90 and hit enter, and there's the circle that is tangent to these two circles right here, and with a radius of 90. Okay, now it says to do that on the other two circles. So if I right click to go back in here, you can see that it now says specify the center point. So you'd hope that it would go back into tan radius, but it doesn't. It goes back to the default one, which is center and radius. So I'll escape out of there, go to the tool set again, select tan radius, select the tan, and now it says my last dimension was 90, so just hit enter, go back to the top, choose my tangent point, and enter, go back to the top, tangent point, and hit enter. And there's our 4 circles that are tangent to those other 2 circles. And the last set of instructions now says make a circle coming from the midpoint of our object, going to the inside quadrants of all 4 circles, to the mid or center of all 4 circles, and to the outside quadrant of all 4 circles. So I'm going to start off by going C, enter. What is the center point? Well, it's the middle of this object, and I'll go out and find the quadrant. Now you can see right there it says perpendicular, but if I slide up or down, I will find that quadrant point. Click right there. Now I'm going to do it again, except this time I'm going to go up to the top left, and I'm going to click on the circle, and I'm going to choose circle 2 points. And the 2 points are going to be the center of this circle and the center of that circle. And finally, I now need to make a circle that touches the inside quadrants of these 2 points right here. And I can also choose, in this case, because it's sort of symmetrical, I could actually choose circle 3 points and choose that quadrant, and that quadrant. And there we go. All right, now let's move into the rectangle command. So we'll head over to the properties inspector, change the layer from circle to rectangle, and follow the instructions. So it says draw a rectangle that is up and to the right from the center of the object. So and it should have a height that touches the top of this circle and a width that touches the outside edge of that circle. So we sort of need to know, well, how far is it from the center to out there? But there is a way to do that without knowing that actual dimension. Now, down in the properties the status bar at the bottom right, you need to make sure that this command is on object snap tracking. So make sure that that one is on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go REC, which is rectangle, hit enter. I'm going to select the starting point, which is in the center of our object, and we're going to make a rectangle over here. Now remember, it wants to touch the top and the right hand side, but I can't really do that without going over there and actually touching those edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to click on them, but I'm going to hover my mouse right there on the quadrant just for a second, and hover the mouse up top again on the quadrant. And then when I slide over, it's going to create a line that is on the outside edge and with the top edge right there. So you can see that it gives me those green guidelines indicating that I am at those intersection points. And I just click and that is done. Okay. Now, If I want to create another one, it says off and from the center up and to the left, and then the center down and to the left, and the center down and to the right. So I'll do the same thing. Right click back in, find my center point, go touch the top, wait for a second, touch the outside edge, wait for a second, slide up, and it should snap to that point right there, and click. Do it again, right click back in, choose my center, hover over that end point, wait for a second, hover down here on the bottom quadrant, slide over, and I should get that green line that sort of forms, indicating right there that I am touching both those points. And finally, for the last one, same thing, touch the outside edge, touch the bottom edge, and slide over, and it should just snap right to that point. And there we go. We now have those 4 squares, and let's move on to the next section. Right, so the number 4 instruction in the rectangle section says make 4 rectangles in the top outside corner, or I guess the bottom outside corner is on the bottom, that has an X distance of 200 millimeters and a Y distance of 250. Now, so when you're forming a rectangle, if I choose my starting point and I move up to the right and up, so right and up, I start out with my X, which is to the right and up, and they're both positive coming from that starting point right there. Now, if I go off to the left right here, okay, now it's negative in the X, but still positive in the Y. If I go down and to the left, it's negative in the X and negative in the Y. And if I go down, but to the right, it is positive in the X and negative in the Y. So it tells me to start off with a rectangle in the top corner, and I want to make it come down like this. So my X is going in the negative direction and has a distance of 200. So I would type in negative 200, comma, and then it's waiting for the Y direction, which again is down, which is negative. So I type in negative 250 and hit enter, and that rectangle is formed in that corner. So I can right click back into the rectangle command, select this corner, and I want to make a rectangle down in that direction. So this would be positive X, negative Y, so it would be 200, comma, negative 250, enter. And now if I do it again on the bottom left, it's going to be going up, or sorry, we'll deal with the X first, to the right, which is positive, and going up, which is positive, so it'd be positive 200, and you don't have to actually type positive, just 200, comma, 250, enter, and that one's done. Last one, coming from that corner, it's going negative in the X, positive in the Y, so negative 200, comma, 250, enter, and we are done. Okay, so the next set of instructions say create a square with chamfered edges of 20 millimeters. That's the chamfered length on each of the corners, and the side lengths are 100 millimeters, and they're coming again from these outside corners right here. So we're going to this time go into the rectangle command, but there is a little white box in the instruction section that we see in the middle of our screen right there, and if I hit the down arrow, it brings up 5 different options. So there's one that says chamfer. So I'm going to choose chamfer, and it say what is the first chamfer? Well, I'm going to choose 20. Hit enter, and it's saying, well, what about the others, the second chamfer? Well, I'm going to do 2 chamfers of 20, so I'll hit 20 again, hit enter, and now it's saying let's make that rectangle. So I'm going to do the same thing coming from this corner, making my rectangle right here with those chamfered edges. And chamfered edges are basically just sort of angled edges, so it's almost forming like an octagon shape for us here. Okay, so again, what is the length of the sides? Well, it's 100 and 100. I'm going negative in the x, negative in the y, so I'm going to type negative 100, comma, negative 100, hit enter, and that is done. So I'm going to do the same thing for all four corners here again, except I'm going to have to just make sure that I'm typing in the correct positive or negative direction. So this one's going to be 100, comma, negative 100. This one at the bottom is going to be 100, comma, 100. And the one on this far bottom right is going to be negative 100, comma, 100. And there we have it. So the next set of instructions, what does it say? Well, now create a square in the center of the last two bottom squares that we just made. So we want to do it in the center of these two squares right here using a side length of 50 and filleted corners of with a radius of 10. Okay, so I'm going to come into my rectangle command again, and I'm going to drop down this arrow, and I'm going to go to chamfer right here, and I'm just going to go 0, enter, 0, enter, set that back to 0, escape out of there, go back into my rectangle command, down arrow, and this time I'm going to choose filleted. So fillet is sort of like a chamfer, except it's rounded on the corners instead of angled like that. So it's asking me what my radius is. Well, in the instructions, it says to make the radius at 10. And it says to now find the center of this. So if I go and touch the outside of this rectangle down here that we made, I can now come and find the center of that, and I start to make my rectangle. Okay, and it's going to be, what is it, 50 by 50. Okay, so I'm going to type 50, and that's in the X, and comma 50 in the Y, but it didn't put it in the center. It made the corner where I started at the center, so I need to move that down. So I can do that by clicking on my rectangle with the filleted edges that I just selected and typing M for move. And then I'm going to go up, grab the center of that, and I want to put it in the center of this one, but you can see, hey, it's not giving me that center point, but I need to just drag over and touch the outside edge. Hey, there it is, and click. Okay, so let's do the same thing for the other side. Now I don't have to even start to form it in that case from the center, right? I'm just going to be like REC, enter. I'm going to make my rectangle at 50, comma 50. And now I'm going to move this. So I'm going to select it, type M, enter, grab the middle point and touch the outside edge of that rectangle and drop it into the middle. Okay, so the next command says that we want to do the same thing in the top two little octagon-y, rectangle-y type things that we just created there, except this time we're going to create it with a radius of 25 and still with side lengths of 50. So I'm going to go back into my rectangle command, down arrow, oops, sorry, I gotta click in there, down arrow, and choose fillet again, and I'm going to change it from that 10 to 25. And now I'm going to again just sort of create that rectangle right there with this side lengths of 50, comma 50. And notice that it actually forms a circle in there because the radius is half of the length of the rectangle. So I've got 4 radiused corners forming this circle right here. So again, what am I going to do? Well, last time I selected it, then typed M, but you can do it the reverse order. Type M, enter, select the object, enter, select the middle point, touch the outside edge, and move it in there. Let's do it again over on the other side. So REC, enter. The fillet is already set at 25, so I'm just going to go 50, comma 50, enter, again, M, enter, select my circle, enter, go touch that or grab it in the midpoint, touch the outside of the circle and place it right there. Okay, and what does it say to do now? It says to create a dodecagon. Well, a dodecagon is a 12-sided object from the center of the object and having a radius of 625 inscribed inside the circle. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's head up into our tool sets on the left-hand side. And now if I left click on the rectangle right there and I go down to its second selection right there is Polygon and release, it's now saying how many sides do you want? I want 12. And where are we starting it from? From the center of this object. And now it says, do you want it inscribed in the circle or outside the circle? And our instructions said inside the circle. And basically we're now going to slide that over and we're going to create that dodecagon within this circle here at a radius of, what did we say? 625. So I'm just going to say 625 and enter, and there is the dodecagon that we just created. Now last one, it says switch to the circle layer, and you want to create a circle from the center with a diameter of 1250, which happens to be a radius of 625. So I'm going to go C, enter, from the center, coming over with a radius of 625, hit enter, and that is done. Good job. See you next time.